Hello there, sword friends. Hopefully this is working, and more or less I have some chores to do. I'm going to clean some of the things in the collection here, hence the different view. This is the sword cave that, since the move, has not been properly adorned with racks and stuff. So yeah, it's a bit of a mess, but still needs to be cleaned. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to meander about, and well, not meander. I'm going to sit pretty much right here, as it's the only space physically that I can continue to move in this room safely, and clean some swords. Just oil them. There's no hard things happening, and I will do my best to answer questions and talk about it. I'm not going to get through all of the swords here. There's just too many of them. They kind of go around, and then there's some more out there. But it is a chance to see some of the random crap that's here. I know that's of interest, and to ask questions about it. So throw some stuff in the chat if you have a question. Likewise, I can talk about something else, I suppose, rather than the sword I'm holding. But it's hard. It's hard for me to walk and chew bubblegum. Alex, let's see if I can. Hey, still remembering how to use StreamYard. Hello, Alex. I'm glad you could join. I'll do my best to do things, but my hands are going to be all oily in just a second. So there's that. Good morning, John. Hello. Yes, cleaning day. Where to begin? So what I use for cleaning is break free, and I have a like a microfiber cloth here that I douse in oil and then basically just wipe the sword down. It's not particularly hard or interesting to watch, but I'm doing it on the internet anyway. So, but I promise it will get more interesting than watching me apply oil to a rag in just a second, but probably, in fairness, not much more interesting unless you want to hear me babble. What I can open up the floor to is if there are swords that you are interested in particular about hearing me babble about, because if you are, then I can try and expedite those, put them at the top of the list. Nobody wants to watch me clean boring swords, right? Okay, that is not a good spot to set things. Let's see. Good afternoon, Katana. Wild, hello. Let's see. Come on. My swords have been growing, but I've been giving away the ones I never use. Well, that's going to make you some people's best friend. I try to avoid giving them away. As you can see, then you end up with a closet like this. How about Hanwei L6 swords? At the moment, I don't have any Hanwei L6 swords. I do have... Okay, where are you? The L6 one I have at the moment, I think. Do I have any L6 swords? No, I don't have any Hanwei L6 swords. But I do have this. This is a project that is in the works, and it is an L6 katana from Howard. So this is one of his L6 ones. I have a 1086 one over there I need to give a wipe down to, but this is one of his L6 lines, and it's in need of polish and all the love. Look, now that's done, and I don't have to oil it anymore. But this is an L6 one from Howard. I'm not sure what's going to happen with this one just yet, other than I'm going to have it polished and mounted up. But it's like a 28-inch and a little bit wider. It's going to be it reminds me of a grass cutter, like it seems a very purpose-built Tamashigiri blade. And it has some heft to it, which is not something I typically feel in Howard's work, but this feels like a purpose-built Tamashigiri style blade in about 28 inches. So that is the L6 one that I have, and it is in a long line of projects that I that I have signed myself up for. All right. Oh, That's not who I wanted, but hello, Eric. Who makes your fittings for finer swords? I have had, well, it kind of runs through a few different stages. Option A, I've done entire fitting sets from Fred Lohman. Do I have any around from Fred Lohman? Not handy. But some in here that I'm eventually going to get to probably were full sets from Fred Lohman. It was like a custom Kamunjo blade that had silver Higo fittings. I didn't do that project, but it's a good example of a video that I've done with like a full set of Fred Lohman fittings. Every now and again, there's some other fittings from like Yamato Bidogu or something like that, Japanese kind of cast fittings that are of reasonable quality. If I have fittings made, I've had Kevin Adams, Roman Urban, and Marcus Chambers make different sets for me, as well as Rick Barrett has made some, Josiah Boomershine has made some, but they've made like kind of piecemeal fittings rather than like a full set. No, that's not true. I've had Josiah make a full set of fittings before. But yes, otherwise, Roman Urban, Kevin Adams, Marcus Chambers, and Josiah Boomershine are like the four people that have had make full sets of fittings of different varieties. This is a Howard Clark 1086 katana. I think I've done a video on it at some point, but this was an Urushi set done by Roman Urban, and I didn't quite know what to expect. It came out a little glossier, but that's just because I didn't know what I was asking for. But it's got silver inlay and swirly mitsudomes all around it. It's got a kojiri, which looks a bit phallic, and silver inlays on all of the fittings. And there's little commas flowing throughout the sword. A metal kurigata with kind of the same silver inlay detail, and it's very nice. But Roman Urban made this set for me. And actually, initially it was intended for a different sword, but it ended up on this sword, which is a Howard Clark 1086 blade, and one that is real pretty that I've had for a while, and that I think is likely sold here in the not too distant future. So I won't get a chance to hem and haw about it too much longer, I don't think. But anyway, this is an example of Roman Urban's work. He does great stuff. I don't know how active he is anymore, but he did make really amazing, and probably still does make really amazing fittings. Hopefully that answers the question. Does this stream end when all of the... No, the stream will end long before that. It likely ends when my son comes home and starts screaming. It takes me about 5 or 6 hours to make it through everything if I'm not streaming. And so the pause with questions and stuff is likely not going to yield a huge amount of progress. So you won't get to see them all. Any update on fittings being made? No, unfortunately not. I do have, might as well take it out and clean it right now, the Huawei katana that is designated for My Little Pony. There's been some challenges on making fittings, and so I think what has to happen is I need to design a different theme. So I wanted to do Rainbow Dash because that was my daughter's favorite pony, and I've gotten some good ideas. I don't know a ton about them other than as a dad buying toys for his daughter, but the My Little Pony Brony community has been very generous and honestly very thoughtful. I didn't realize there'd be such an overlap of people that enjoyed My Little Pony and also swords of the Japanese style and variety. So yeah, there were some really good suggestions that helped me kind of refine the design I was looking for, but it was still really ambitious from a fitting standpoint. And to get somebody to like make them from a custom standpoint, like Marcus Chambers or something like that, it'd be a lot of engraving and file work and be thousands of dollars, which is outside the budget of the thing. I can probably spend $300 to $500 on a set of fittings for it and still come in at around the price that I'm looking for. So I need to rethink it, and I'm probably gonna, I don't remember the pony's name, but it's the purple one who's also popular. But there's fewer colors involved, and I can probably make the mark they have a little bit more easily than the plan that I had for the Rainbow Dash one. So that is kind of the tentative plan. I just haven't gotten a chance to think about it really yet, but that is on my list of things to do. And the folks at Visor, now Cloudhammer, I don't know why it's gonna take a while to root itself out. You have no idea how much I have to edit the videos when I say the wrong name. But anyway, point is they can do some custom stuff with some CNC. And so if I can find a theme that works with the machinery they have, I might be able to actually get something on budget, and that would be awesome. So I also have had some overtures to do a resin handle with like some sort of sculpted something on it. It would look a little bit like a Highlander sword ish, you know, something like this. And I don't know. It doesn't. I love the idea of like a bespoke sculpture in it, but I don't think the like theme would look right, and I'd have to paint it then, and I don't think that would look right either. So still bouncing around with ideas because I want to make a good project. I want it to be kind of cool. I'd love all the people here that are like, what the hell are you doing making a My Little Pony katana? Why would you do that? You are dumb. It'd be kind of neat if at least like 10% of them were like, that's actually kind of cool. If I didn't know it was My Little Pony, I might buy it. So anyway, hoping that answers the question. Oh my, I've missed some things. I watched a review about the Dark Sword Armory sword. What do you think about the steel they're using for medieval swords? Well, in fairness, the last one I did was, I don't have to clean that one. I think I got that one when I put it away for the review, but I'll take it out anyway. That's this guy here, the Knochenbrecher, Knocketbrecher. Anyway, the 5160 that they use, which is I think the steel that Dark Sword Armory uses, is sufficient and has held up, I think, quite well to the abusive stuff that I've done. I've tested I didn't do this one, but I did smack around the Baron and the Alexandria, and I think they all survived through some of the aggressive testing that I do pretty well. And it's also worth noting that like the Alexandria from Dark Sword Armory, I tested in at least some of it in pretty cold weather, and or was it the Baron? One of them I tested in pretty cold weather, and it held up for a time. I think it broke them both in warmer time frames. But yeah, the steel and the heat treatment they use doesn't seem to be problematic. Some of the swords, at least the Alexandria that I tested in the Baron, both had some distal taper to them, and were not like super robust thick pieces like this Knochenbrecher is. But the steel seems to hold up, so that would be what I can tell you about it. All right, sorry, I'm sucking at chat. My hands are all oily and I'm touching my laptop now and it's gross, but more to clean. Would you be willing to reach out to Cold Steel for one of the warrior katanas for a destruction test? Yeah, I think I have reached out to Cold Steel. I haven't necessarily gotten any interest back, but I believe I have reached out to them, and I don't know that I get a lot of interest back. But I have talked to some people that work at Cold Steel. I don't know if they're comfortable with me telling who they are, but it's not anything particularly secretive that they've given me other than some pointers on reviews and some thoughts on swords, and I've appreciated it. It's helped me provide some perspective on how to talk to people that also are interested in swords, but maybe not in the same way that I am. Yes, but they still did not offer any swords to break. I'd like to, though. All right, next sword to clean. You're probably going to see a few katanas here for a minute. I got a few of them over here. This is a somewhat obscure in the new acquisitions video that I did, and it's sneaky with rust. I can see little pits and stuff forming again, so I actually have to go out and bring this to a more aggressive kind of cleaning, but wiping it with oil is still going to help a little bit. But this is, I believe, an old Hanwei blade that it's folded, even though you really can't see it, but some of the subtle hata characteristic of Hanwei is in there. And if you take the tang off or take the ska off, you can see a characteristic ska or nakago. The tang looks like Hanwei's markings and whatnot, but it's different. I think it might have been like custom mounted up or something, because this is far and away a better mount than I typically see on Hanwei blades, but they did do them just a little bit better while they were older. Just they weren't usually quite this shape or this tight. So the scabbard looks very Hanwei, but anyway, old 30-inch one. I gotta let the scabbard dry out. And also, ooh, don't fall over. You're expensive. Okay. It also, and that list came with this one, which I'm pretty sure is an older Hanwei Shinto. This one has not rusted. It's similarly tight, but shaped actually like things from Hanwei. So it's a little bit closer, but this reminds me of the railway steel items that I used to see quite a bit. And it has kind of some of the same fittings and overall. So maybe this was done by Hanwei, but was like a custom order. I've never quite seen one like it. I've seen most of the Hanwei ones. Don't break. Okay. Back for questions. Sorry if I missed chat. I'm going to be suckier at chat than I usually are. Just long wondered question. How durable is Hanwei's KC-120 steel on their folded steel blades? I've never seen anyone really push one of them. I've never seen someone damage one for testing. It's a fair question. I tend to find the folded steel to be a little softer than their equivalent T10. So if I think about the experiences I've had with the Torii XL, the Practical XL, and the Musashi XL, all of those are of similar blade geometry. And I would say the Practical is a little, obviously, of a lesser grade of finish work. And the Torii might have some higher end materials, but I don't think the finish work is really any better. The Musashi I found to be the most durable and hold the edge the longest and also be the least susceptible to bending. What I can't substantiate is how thick those blades were. They looked like the same geometry, but that doesn't really mean that they were. And I don't know that I have accurate measurements, for distal taper and all that kind of stuff. So it's possible that Torii was thinner and therefore that would make it likely more susceptible to bending. But generally speaking, my impression, just kind of shooting from the hip, based on the swords that I've played with from Hanwei's KC-120 folded steel, is that it's at least bends a little easier than their equivalent T10 blades or the other steels that they use. Interestingly enough, this is a Hanwei. This is my favorite sword. People ask me all the time, what's my favorite sword? It's this one right here. It's a Hanwei bamboo mat that I've had redone. And it's a weird one. So it's quite a bit heavier, like substantially heavier than most of the bamboo mats are today. I happen to like this one. I've tried to buy, I've probably had 10 or 15 Hanwei bamboo mats now, that trying to find one that fits the same as this does and feels the same, and none of them ever do. But this is made of some proprietary steel that Hanwei uses. It's not substantially thicker or thinner than many of the XL blades that I've used, but I've never had it really bend. And I've done so much stupid stuff with this, not intentionally abusive stuff, but debatably stupid things, and it really has held up well. So I think KC-120 is stuff. Their railway steel items have held up really well. Their T10 has held up really well. The Raptors, I haven't pushed one of those particularly hard, but I've done some like brush cutting and whatnot. Those hold up really well. I've had a Renshu series blade that held up pretty well. What hasn't held up really well is their L6 pieces. I've had some bad experiences with those. And then the KC-120 is not bad. I've seen lots of people use it in a dojo and not bend them, but I've also had a few Tories and not had thought really anything special about the edge retention or, how rigid it was. It's not I don't want to suggest that it's bad. It's just that it's more expensive and also supposed to maybe be a little special. And I found it to be more of an aesthetic thing than anything else. All right. Do you think the Hanwei bamboo mat is a better cutter than the Torii Elite? No. No, I don't think so. The Torii Elite is really quite a blade. Any of the Elite or XL geometry blades from Hanwei, which I don't actually have one of for as much as I tout them, I don't actually own one. I sold every time I get one, I end up selling it. There's somebody at a dojo that can use it. I'm not using it very much, so I end up parting ways with it. But any of the XL or Elite Geometry blades from Hanwei are pretty wide and very kind of. I would say they focus in on being excellent tamashigiri blades, somewhat to the detriment of cutting other things. So it depends on what you're cutting. They're usually robust and thick, and they do cut perhaps green bamboo or tatami really well, but I don't think it's going to be as easy to pull off some of the tricky bottle type cuts, or if you're less of a backyard cutter and more of a practitioner, if you're delivering like quick harassing blows in the spirit of fencing and getting out and not being struck in return, it's harder to do that with a big robust blade like an XL Geometry blade, in my opinion. Hanwei Elite Geometry is great. Even the torqued XL I have does. I missed the part of it, but this is a Last Legend Yashima, I think. One of their higher end options from Last Legend. Last Legend was a company that went away sometime in 2006, and they had a whole bunch of different variety of swords. But as you can see, there's, the fittings quality is muddy. I don't know what the hell is going on here with this canted. It could have just been dropped or something like that in its life. But they did things that other people didn't. The folding pattern on them is usually a little bit different. The polish was never really great, but they were a little bit more geared towards users. But they had things like rattan wrap scabbards and the ability to like pick and choose some pretty meaningfully cool things. And they offered different shapes, which is something that I think is lost a little bit in today's market. If I look at a lot of the swords that I've gotten from manufacturers recently, they're not all the same, but Cloudhammer, Dragon Sword, Zisei, a lot of the other manufacturers that have reached out and sent me things, they all have very similar shapes in terms of size and in terms of curvature. It's very, very similar. Now, that doesn't mean that like the sizes are necessarily interchangeable or that if you get to the nitty gritty, they're all the same. But if you look at some of the options from Last Legend, they have a lot more, at least profile taper, and they offered a lot more options with Koshi Sori, which isn't something that you see so much today. They had some very deep Sori options, which few vendors offer now. And it's a pain in the butt to do that because you can't use some of the same suppliers to get like scabbards and stuff from. So you have to take on more of an active role in doing it. And sometimes that's a bit to the detriment. Like this one is very, like the rattan wrap on here, for example, is a little bit, high school project kind of thing rather than something that I would expect from a professional company. And this was around about $800 or $1,000 when it was new. And I don't think this was, fixed or glued on. I think it came this way, which in 2006 money was more than it is today. Oh, I have missed things. I'm sorry. I can't scroll back on chat so much today, so I'm going to have to jump around a little bit. If I miss your question, feel free and ask it again. It's hard for me to scroll with greasy hands. What do you think is acceptable wait time for a sword order from one of the larger manufacturers, Arms & Arm? A lot of these folks are really backed up right now, and I think most of them are pretty transparent about having like a year-long wait or more, which is what Albion is saying. Do I think it's acceptable? Ideally, no. Acceptable, yes, because they're saying, here's how long it will take, and then leaving the option for you to proceed or not. And they're probably going to take a little bit longer because life happens. Albion, with COVID and all sorts of stuff happening, I think they've had some struggles, and I think some of the people have passed away that work there. So that throws production back a little bit. And they're not a small company, but they're not a big one either. So it's very likely that if they say 12 months, it's probably going to take a little bit longer. Hopefully not 24 months, but I'm guessing it will take a little bit longer than anticipated. A lot of the items that are made to order, they take some time. And I have the luxury of going to Arms & Armor every once in a while, and I can tell you those guys over there are working hard to make stuff. I'm glad they're busy, but as long as a vendor says this is how long it will take, and then is within a reasonable threshold of error close to that time, I think that's acceptable because they're putting that decision in your hands. Where I start to get a little persnippety about it is, if Albion said, kept the wait time at 1 month and then was taking, 16 months to make things and continually telling people 1 month, that I think would be a straight up dick move. But that's not the case. And I don't know that too many vendors are doing that. Some of them are taking way longer than expected, but there's also been some somewhat unexpected challenges in the market and supply chain and all that kind of stuff. So I do have some sympathy for it, but yeah, as long as they're pretty close to it, I don't mind it. And I think a lot of people seem to like the results, right? And if you want a good sword, a lot of the people that are the best at it or that offer the most compelling value propositions out there take a long time to get anything done because they have a lot of orders and they're not making more of them just because of that. They can still make what they can make. Hopefully that answered the question. I have a message from Krieger Historical coming my way in the next couple of months. Seems like a decent comparison to Lance Connect. Any interest in taking a look at it when it arrives? Yes, I did. I think a few people have asked me about Krieger Armories. I did reach out and ask them. I want to say it was Krieger. It might have been Incaris Craft. I've reached out to a few people that make other messers and stuff out there. So far, nobody is particularly keen on sending me something, but a few of them offered me a discount if I want to buy one. But I'm full up. I can take samples, but I don't know about. Got to get rid of some before I buy more. But yes, I would like to see it. Maybe ping me on Facebook. I haven't. I'm a little bit. It'll probably be a while before I can get to it. But if there's an opportunity for me to check out a new one straight from the vendor, I think that would be helpful and cool to look at. So maybe ping me on Facebook or send me a private message, and we can work out details that hopefully work out. Have you come across any katana that include kozuka in the handle? Well, they're usually in the scabbard, but no, not. Well, there was some Hanwei Tanto, I think, that came with a kozuka, and I want to say one from Dragon King might. But it's not a common thing on the production side of things. That's a lot of swords. I recently moved to a house and really want to buy a sword. Any types of sword or weaponry you can recommend as display pieces? And any of them are cool. That's hard to answer. If you have any specifics on what you like or themes or stories, or I don't know, it all depends on what you're after. You can spend $50 on a functional sword that looks okay. And maybe is beautiful to you. And you can spend tens of thousands of dollars on very nice pieces as well. I would say do bear in mind that as display pieces, if you have no intention of using, there's an element of cleaning, which is what I'm doing today. So you gotta keep them clean. They require a little bit of maintenance. But yeah, all of that. There's hundreds of videos on my channel. Take a look at something. Take a look at a few of the videos, see what you like and don't, and then shoot a private message out or post something on one of the Facebook forums, and I'm sure you'll get some guidance on suggestions. This is a Skyjiro scallop, or I don't know how to say it in Japanese, but it's a Skyjiro piece. I did a review on one of these many moons ago, not this specific blade though, and then had the opportunity to buy one. It also has a big, somewhat beefy wide blade, but not quite. It looks a little funky down at the habaki area, like they were trying to keep it wide, but then were limited by the kind of pre-made furniture they use. But also very fun sword. I've been somewhat loath to part with the Skyjiro one because I often use Skyjiro as like an example or a comparison to other swords, and so it's handy to have an example around. What do you think about the Honshu series of products, the budget-friendly swords that are using 1065, 1060? So that's a fair question. I reviewed one recently, and honestly, I was kind of excited about it. So I reviewed the Wakizashi very, very recently, And I would say the downside is it had some things that I would call not okay from a functional standpoint. And I think they're geared towards functional blades, and it broke in a way that I would say is too easily at either end of the sword. The pommel fell off, and it sounds like they've acknowledged a problem there and are working to resolve it in future iterations, which is great. And I thought the blade broke a little too easily. They disagreed, and I'm a little bit on the fence. So the way the Honshu blade broke is similar to another sword that I'm working through right now, and I would say I have to maybe re-examine if I think it broke too easy. I still think it did. I'm still leaning towards it should not have broken. At the same time, that smacking it on the flat of the blade on a tree, I've done that in a number of videos. I've done it in the cold in a number of videos, but it's now that specific tree has broken two swords very similarly, and one was a little bit more of a shock. So maybe my testing methodology needs to be reevaluated on the blade side of the Honshu, but I would still say that the pommel falling off is unacceptable and is as much a deal breaker as the blade breaking where it did. Though I do need to maybe reconsider it, and this weekend sometime I'm probably going to do that. But yeah, anyway, I do think they have a unique design that you're like or don't. I thought they were comfortable enough. It didn't come particularly sharp, but the budget allows a person to potentially buy a belt sander and sharpen it and still come out ahead on the deal in comparison to some of the other stuff out there. So yeah, I certainly didn't mind them. I think it'd be nice to test some of the other things or some of the things they offer when they're revised, because I thought they were cool. I was just a little bit disappointed by the overall durability of the sword. What I did like about the Wakizashi, incidentally, was the subhilt. I've had that on knives. Can't say that I've been a fan, but experiencing it on a sword and how it works in your grip and some of the parts they did, I really expected that to be kind of dopey, and it wasn't. It felt really good and ergonomic and served a purpose in terms of locking it in my hand. I can't say everyone's going to like it, but it was a fun thing to experience and better executed than I expected. All right, this, incidentally, which I wiped, but we'll wipe again. By the way, like just as a side note for sword enthusiasts, I'm guessing most of you already know this, but this blah, blah, blah can leave saliva on the sword, and then you get little speckly rust bits, which has happened to me. So if you're looking at swords and talking to your friends and want to look smart, hold them over here while you talk, so that you don't splatter little bits of saliva on the sword. Yeah, heads up on that. You're probably going to see me miss that a few times because I'm talking to a camera and a microphone. But anyway, I'll try not to spit on my sword, since the intention here is really to clean them. This is a Evolution Blade LMC Motohara series. It's one that I use quite a bit for training, and it has been excellent. I really enjoy this sword. It is light and nimble and does things good in terms of cutting. It doesn't necessarily do a ton of work for you because it's on the lighter side, but it is still just a joy to train and cut with. I'm a bigger guy, so like the mass of my arms tends to move things to tatami mats for me. I don't necessarily need a ton of help from the sword to do it, but this one, it certainly favors good technique, and I appreciate that about it as well. But yeah, that's, if anyone is wondering, what is the best sword that you can go buy today if money is not is not really in the factor? Evolution Blades does an absolutely excellent job. They can cost a substantial amount of money and don't generally give you the same frills of like folded and laminated kind of steels, and some of the looks of them can be on the plain side, or more, I don't know, cliche what a katana looks like, which I think they can zazz it up if you want to do a custom order. But yeah, they're from a practitioner standpoint, and the way things fit together and the way things hold up over time. Actually, I'll put this one down and break up a different one to elaborate on that point. This is a Citadel bamboo, and Citadel would be one of the competitors to Evolution Blades, at least in terms of price. So this bamboo katana from Citadel was $2,800. You might be able to find some of them. And many moons ago, when I did a review, which incidentally, this is not the sword I had in the review. I sold that one and then bought another one. I'm smart that way. Anyway, point is that the saya bound a little bit on the one that I had, and bound a little bit on this one when I had it. Now that I've had it for years, the Koiguchi area is cracking, and it's binding kind of before the habaki near the Kisaki area down here. So the saya is just a little bit too tight, and the change in humidity and weather and all that kind of stuff has not done this sword a huge amount of favors. It's still a great sword. It still cuts really well. It's still beautiful. All of the ito and everything is held up. There's a lot about it that is fantastic, but the saya was just a little bit tight and had a little bit of bind in it, despite it in a lot of other ways being excellent and not rattling. I don't want to suggest or infer that it's not a great product. It still is, but it started to bind a little bit over time, which is not terrible or even all that uncommon. But because it was a little tight, now it's a little tight in an area that I can't easily remedy. And the Evolution Blades has not had that problem. I haven't had it quite as long, but I've had either one of them for years, which you can kind of see from my reviews. And the Evolution Blades has just held up really well as a training tool. Speaking of training tools, I know there are questions, and I am sorry, but I will check. This is something sword friend John turned me on to, a company called, I think it's Ufu, but I'll eventually get a review on these bags done. I wanted to use them, but these are like Udo bags, so you can carry around your sword. They sent me a 2-sword one and a 4-sword one and a gi to use, and I've been enjoying it apart from sweating a lot in the gi. But in terms of using this thing is also really handy. I have, before having something like this that allowed me to strap swords in and carry them next to each other without bouncing around, I looked like a Sherpa when I went into the dojo. I usually have a camera with a bag, and then if I'm going to Toyama, I bring a bokin, which is in a soft bag, and then an iaito in another bag. And because my arm hurts, a heavier iaito if I feel up to using it, and then a shenkin to practice with that I'm comfortable with, and then sometimes another shenkin that I'm using to test. So I might have 4 separate sword bags, and the bigger one is over there. But I've been using the smaller one. This is the one I bring to Katori because I don't usually do much for EI, and then I use the bokin primarily there. But when I go to Toyama, I got 4 bags down to 1. And it has been fantastic. So if you get a chance, I think it's Ufu. They're out of Spain, I think. Anyway, it's been a Budo bag that I've enjoyed using for a bit here. Sorry, I'll get back to questions now. Can you explain how katana pricing works? I see them for sale on SBG forum all the time. I can't understand how they get the prices they do. There's so many factors. Yes, there's a ton of factors. Well, if you look at, I keep wanting to grab examples I've grabbed before, but I do want to actually clean things here. So this is a Bob Ignath bear blade, and it's in a polish actually that I didn't realize it had when I bought it. So I'm happy about that. But it's made by one of the kind of American forefathers of Japanese style sword making, but somebody that turned or aided in a lot of the smiths out of the US that you might hear today, and making hamons and doing other bits. So this sword in its current condition is probably a few $1,000s. And I know Ted Tenold has one of Bob Ignath's finished blades on his website right now for around $5,000. But it's notoriety and competence in the smith and the story about it, and that it's handmade and not a kind of faceless person that you're unaware of that made it in a factory or something, but that one person who is competent and talented as an artist and craftsman put their individual time into making this thing, and then hopefully it makes a beautiful sword when it's all done. So those things can cost money. Smiths of note usually command a lot more money for their wares. The flip side, though, there's $50 swords out of China, which at a distance, if you see the Musashi $50 sword that I did a review on, and it looks the same as, this Huawei blade that I think I already cleaned and is in the wrong pile, then don't spend your money on it and enjoy it. But There's differences in the steel, differences in the quality, differences in the attention to detail, differences in the fittings, differences in polish work, all sorts of stuff can really change it. And I suppose the main thing is spend money where you can appreciate those differences. There's what somebody else might think is the best, but that doesn't mean it needs to be for you or that you have to spend your money on it if you don't find it appealing. Thanks for the super chat. Always reason. Get more swords. Is that really? I will use your super chat money to get more swords. It is an inevitable thing that will happen. Just to mix it up, I will take this one out. This is the Dark Sword Armory Messer, and it was sent to me with the Knochenbrecher to review, and I just did the Knochenbrecher first. And this one is a little different. It's interesting that they at least put the noggin in the right spot, but they have their kind of take on the noggin being more useful, I'd argue. The noggles usually on the Messers I see are a little bit small and might keep something from sliding just down on your hands, but if it glanced off, it would still clip your knuckles, and this offers a little bit more of a knuckle guard than many I've seen. It's in the right spot, but it also looks welded on, so this one I'm probably going to give a good whack to and see how it holds up. But no distal taper on this one either, but it's two-handed, and I think designed to not have any taper and be just a meaty chopper. So I haven't gotten a chance to play much with it yet because my elbow hurt and this is heavy. you feel it, not so much in two hands, but in one. Anyway, this will be something that I'll get to reviewing eventually. But I can tell you, if you were looking for a light and lively sword that was short, that one is not it. But fun, certainly maybe. Get more swords. I can at least get to talking about more swords. This is a Kabutowari, I think. It's a cold steel blade that is, what's it mean? Helmet breaker. And I'm not sure, I did a video on it. I fixed the scabbard and stuff. I'm not a huge fan of this thing. I'm probably going to sell it soon, actually. I keep it around as an example and then never talk about it. So maybe it's just time to move that on. It was kind of neat to play with a little bit, but I don't need to anymore. This one is one that is, which way there's the side. This is the Hanwei Meichen katana. And it's one I picked up recently in an acquisition, and I am really delighted by this sword. I really, really, really like it. The Hanwei Shinto is a little bit cliche with all the dragons and stuff on it, but I always like the balance of it. But the 25th anniversary Shinto is one that I also really like. It's a little more silver, and I like that they leaned into the bling side of it. And it was made out of their steel, but the one that I've had from the Hanwei 25th anniversary Shinto was a little chewed up, and I sold it because it wasn't a great example. But this is similar. It's Hanwei's folded steel. It has a very bold pattern on it, and it's just so light in the hand. And it's about what you'd expect from a Hanwei, but again, lots of little details in the waves and stuff here. I like that. Tasteful details and application of gold detailing. And it's short and light and has a nice shape to it in comparison to many of the Iaito that I play with now. And it's not one that they make anymore, which is a shame because it's very cool. It has this kind of ribbed for your pleasure saya or striped saya. I don't know if that's going to come through in the camera particularly well, but maybe if I hold it above my head, no, none of that's going to work. Anyway, it's a pretty sword, and it's very light and lively, and I will eventually make a video blabbing about it. Toughest katana so far. Well, toughest katana that let me put them in separate categories. There's things that should be tougher that are expensive or that I haven't seen, or haven't tested. And then there's the category of swords that I've pushed to failure, and which one would I say is the toughest. So far, I would say the Cloudhammer S7 sword that I tested is probably the toughest. And a lot of this is a little bit shooting from the hip. Bear in mind that when you watch videos, you see an edited version of the testing. And I do my best to keep what's going on in there, but it takes hours. And so there's wax and things like that you might not see. And so as a viewer, you don't necessarily have the greatest perspective comparing one video to the next of the duration of time that elapses or how many stupid things I do. But you see the consequences inevitably of those stupid things, but not necessarily the best view of how long it took to get there. And that's a limitation of me as a reviewer and my capability with cameras. The point is, I couldn't blame you for looking at like some sword that isn't that one and not necessarily seeing a huge difference. But the Visor at the time, now Cloudhammer S7 sword, took the most to break with the current methodology I use. In the past, there were some Ronin katanas that really took a long time, but I was less effective at breaking swords, and I've since become much more skilled in that way and can do it a little bit quicker. The most recent Dojo Pro that I tested also held up in a way that I would say was really good and for a very long time, but not quite as long as the S7 sword from Cloudhammer. So that would be the one that I would say is the toughest. The next ones I would say are probably the Ronin Dojo Pro, and it held up really well and was better balanced than I recall. I remember them being a little bit heavy. That one was a little bit more nimble and fun in the hand. But yes, toughest, and toughest again being defined by me actually pushing it to failure or doing really abusive stuff and being able to judge it against others that I pushed to failure, as well as tough being surviving the stupid things that I do. So whacking trees and slapping it on the side of my stand and throwing it at logs and eventually striking the croquet stake of doom or like metal targets and things like that with the intent to destroy. And that's a critical point there, because when you're trying to break something, your intention is to break it. You're swinging a little different than if your intention is to survive a strike and be able to deliver one in return. So hopefully that answers the question. Yeah, that would be the toughest one that I've pushed. I think there are tougher swords out there, and there are swords that will be better if toughness isn't what you're going for. Another video I did was on this one right here, which I've since cut down, but this was the 3V sword that was sent to me to kind of test out 3V. And it used to be a lot longer and have some toothy bits in it, and it was like a orcish kind of cleaver, but it's made of CPM 3V. And if you look at this sword, when I whacked it on the croquet stick of doom, it started to break apart pretty quick, in contrast to the S7 katana, which is, roughly a similar thickness at the point of breaking anyway. And yeah, so anyway, you might get the impression that this is not as tough as S7. Well, if the toughness test is being struck, at force against a stationary metal rod, yes, but it's worth noting that this is still shaving sharp. I haven't done much to clean the edge up here. I think I literally cleaned it with an oil rag, and I'm not even going to bother. This is full of schmutz that it's going to dirty up my rag. But I dressed a tree. There was a tree that my neighbor fell, and I went back and I cut off all the limbs and I beat it into the kind of the trunk of the tree. And then I took it to, very aggressive other stupid things. And it still maintained like a shaving level edge through all of that nonsense. So if you're going to do not striking a metal rod, but maybe logs or something like that, then this is not a material that you would want to underestimate. It's still, too much stretching. It was still great for edge retention. It's just that the way I test things for durability didn't really highlight that. So if you're not going to do very undebatably stupid things with the sword with the intent to break it, 3V was a great material for maintaining an edge and still holding up pretty well. The method of forging helps when the steel is not necessarily the steel itself, is what helps not. Yeah, I mean, so air power, yes, all things being equal, the steel makes a very big difference in terms of the totality of your outcome, or how good or bad the sword performs in whatever your application is. Unfortunately, this is not the case. Most of us, I'm speculating, the people in this room are going to be, the people online watching this, I should say, are likely going to buy reproduction pieces, not necessarily things made from competent smiths that can take full advantage of what a steel has to offer and the equipment to do that. So if you're looking at like budget conscious pieces, you're right. The reputation and how the steel is treated tends to make a much bigger difference than the steel itself. Another obscure and old Hanway. This is the Peach Monkey. I'm working on, because I know somebody that has dibs this. I'm working on like a showcase video that will outline this sword, and it's a somewhat obscure folded sword, similar in profile to the Bushido, but with a kind of a limited edition Peach Monkey theme, and it's pretty cool actually. And it's one that came. It's a rare one that has one of these from Hanway, which is like a certificate of authenticity. Which, incidentally, if you're going to do a certificate of authenticity, I think this is a great way to do it. It comes with a laminated card. It's got stamps on it. Somebody signed it. I think it looks like actual penmanship on here. It looks quasi-official, and it came in this little envelope. I see sometimes that certificates of authenticity come with like a sheet of printer paper, and some people like it. It's maybe better than nothing, but I think this is a little cooler anyway. But yeah, this is one of the obscure kind of rare ones that Hanway put out. There were 500 of them. They don't seem to come up very often for sale. Ooh, I think I've screwed up on chat quite a bit. Let me see if I can get through some questions. Thoughts on the frog katana from Hanway? The Kuru, I think, is what that is. I've seen it. It looks okay, but I haven't played with one. I think I played with one at like a cutting party. Somebody had one as like a wedding present. I don't remember having any particular strong feelings about it, but I recall the fittings being nice looking. Good to see you. Hopefully, I've gotten some questions. Try to answer Tashanem. But I would say the strongest steel. Okay, I missed this one. It's not Tasha. Taha, sorry. Is 5160 good steel for a katana? What is the strongest possible steel that could be used? It really depends on the application. Again, all things being equal, assuming you get the maximum potential out of a steel, which you're likely not going to do from a mass reproduction vendor. 5160 though is a perfectly competent steel for a katana. I believe some of the Chris Cutlery ones were made out of that. Those did fine. The TFW ones I think were made out of 5160. Those were fine. It's not as commonly used, I think, in katana, but I can say I've had competent made blades that have been able to withstand shenanigans made out of 5160. And the steel, in terms of being used in other swords, I've used it in dark sword armory blades, and they've held up pretty well. So yes, I think it's a good enough sword to use, a steel to use for swords. And I think the other bit about 5160 is that it's a very accessible, given its use in automotive stuff, as I understand. And I'm speaking about my pay grade here. I don't forge things myself, but it seems like it's a relatively prolific steel that's available, and that stands to reason that then a lot of people have experience in using it. Could be that they do it wrong. I hear it doesn't react well with water, but I think a lot of people have some exposure and get used to using it, and it's abundant and available. So. Yes, I think it makes good swords, but I think the other important bit is that a lot of people make good swords with it. This one is one that was in a review recently. Not a review, but somewhere where I showcased it. This is the Golden Oriole. Give it a wipe down. It does look like there's a persistent spot here, which isn't going to come through on the camera, but I think it's from moisture in the scabbard. And this one has sold, so I have to box it up and get it out and maybe make some attempt to address the spotting there. But that one is one that's not mine anymore. All right, next one is the don't drop swords. The Wakizashi from Jeiku. This is their Tamahagane steel, and was in this blade profile here. I did a review on this sword, and it's a fun one. I don't cut with it very often because I'm not at a level in any of the martial arts that I study where I move a Wakizashi around. I do need to file this down a little bit. It's a little bit on the tight side. I think the winter cold time shrinks things up. There will be other sword profiles eventually. I just have a lot of katanas to get through. All right. This is the Tencho that I use from Evolution Blades. It's the other one. So in terms of contrast, I wish I had some more profiles from Motohara Evolution Blades to play with. This one is not super wide, but it's really good for EI. It's very loud and very easy to tell if I'm doing things right. I like the waisted shape, but this corner here is not the most comfortable. If I were to do it again, I'd probably get something that was a little bit more round because of my delicate digits. But again, it's been an absolutely excellent training tool. It has held up well. It still doesn't rattle. It's still tensioned right, and I've used it quite a bit. I've used this sword a lot for EI. I haven't used it very much for cutting, but I've swished it around, you might say, quite a bit. It's one of the, because I can hear it, if my arm feels up to it, it's one that I tend to gravitate to. Especially because tatami mats have been very expensive, so if I'm not cutting anything and I want to move around a sword that's my size that doesn't really let me cheat so much, and I also want to be able to hear it if I'm doing things right, I tend to gravitate. The leather has stayed tight. It's an excellent sword. Are you interested in falchions at all? If my memory serves right, I've only seen you review one, the reverse edge one from, is it Mateusz? Mateusz? I think his name's Matt, like me, but is that how you spell it? Anyway, yes, I just don't get them very often. I did review one from the Art of Sword Making, Mateusz, I think. Anyway, yes, I did review it. I do like them. I think they're cool. Messers have been, I suppose, the dominant variety of kind of the single-edged European sword. There was also one from Tinker that I had, a really itty-bitty one that was debatably not a falchion, but more of a small knife shaped like a falchion. But yes, I think they're cool. I just don't get a chance to play with them very often, but they are very fun, and I don't have any at the moment. Sometimes I have them. I've had a few of them before I did reviews, but that is among the underrepresented items in the catalog of things I've played with. I sold my Albion Alexandrias. Yes, I did. I got rid of them. I personally, I think I would like the Principe more, but I don't like the little bobble on the end of the crossguard. Yeah, they're neat swords, but the Alexandria, it wasn't fun. I don't like the wheel pommel on it when I'm swinging it around. That's a sword that begs me to swing it at tatami mats, and I want to play with it, and I don't like the way it felt. Not bad. Like it didn't stay in my collection. I enjoyed it. I thought it was good, and I stand by everything I said in the reviews. It's a great sword, but at the same time, just wasn't as fun. And as I compared it to the Type 18C from Lucas that had the kind of fishtail pommel on it, I thought that was just way more fun. And I want to hang on to swords that I really, really enjoy, despite what you might see here. Need to downsize a little bit. What's the deal with Swedish powder steel? I think I talked about that early in the thing. Hey, Matt, doing the same thing here. Re-reps and remounting and maintenance. It's the plight of the katana connoisseur. All right. Nearly done with some of the katanas. This is the Hanwei Bushido. And it's a little bit more substantial than the Peach Monkey actually is. I thought they were similar, but having them in hand, it feels a little bit more hefty. But also a fun sword. It's made out of that KC-120 folded powder steel. It's interesting to see the variety of hata that Hanwei has. The Meiji one is really, really bold. This one is very subtle. And the Peach Monkey is almost, hard. It's hard to see, at least in this light. They become more subtle. The Bushido, though, is one of the ones from Hanwei that I always kind of got a kick out of. It has this brown scabbard, and they've made efforts to put kind of lighter colored horn components on it, as some of them came in black anyway, but there's some effort to pick the lighter stuff. And this one in particular, the handle is really, really thin. There's no axe handliness. It almost looks like they've used wakizashi furniture or something like that. But there are classic Fuchikashira that are like this. They just don't tend to get used very often in reproductions. And yeah, I like the little gold rim around it. I think it's a very handsome sword. And subtly, there are little kind of falling cherry blossoms lacquered in this metallic looking scabbard here. I think it's a very handsome sword. This is one I did a video on not too long ago, the Lucky Find sword that I've kind of stuck different pieces on so that it's bedazzled with swirly mitsudomes. I still like the feeling, though I do need to file a little bit more. It's pretty tight in there. All right. That's most of one wall of katanas. I'll pause here. If I didn't get your questions, by the way, throw them here. I'll try to answer them while I'm going down this wall. Again, apologies if I've missed the questions. I do try to answer everyone's questions, but I'm oily and greasy, and it's tough to scroll up on this one. How do you like the Bushido? It's actually the one I plan on getting. I do like it. It's one of the swords that I think balances well between being something comfortable enough to use for EI, but substantial enough to do some heavier cutting. I don't think it's going to give you a particularly light and lively feeling, but it's also not cumbersome or clunky at all. It just kind of teeters out of the lively side of things, but I think it's handsome and well suited to do EI or cutting, but it's not particularly geared toward either one. It's a little bit too heavy to be something I'd want to do thousands of repetitions with, and it's not got the cutting geometry to either do light, lively cutting or tamashigiri, at least as well as some of its XL-based counterparts. So it sits somewhere in the middle of somebody that wants to have one sword, but it's one of those one swords that I would happen to like. It seems substantial enough to be able to do some deflections and like ward off a pole arm or something like that. It's probably going to have some consequences. I don't know how long it's going to survive doing really aggressive stuff, but it's lively enough to be something you could actually fence with and deliver quick strikes with, but maybe not as quick as some of the light ones like the Meijin or the Shinto or the Orchid, which are much more lively blades, but less substantial in their mass. I do really like it, though. I did a video many moons ago about it. I've been seeing katana-style swords with a layer of copper run along near the edge. They look pretty cool, gimmicky. Yeah, I'd be happy to try one. I'd imagine the copper is I can't imagine that's going to help a lot with durability. It's pretty soft stuff. So yeah, don't know, but it does look cool. I see it in like some of the fixed blade knives, and it looks absolutely awesome. I noticed the St. Catherine. Yes, that is. That is here. Certainly one that also needs to be oiled, but just an absolutely wonderful sword. It's so cool. It feels so light in the hand. You can, yeah, it's just a wonderful. It's one of those swords that when I take out, it just kind of makes me smile every time. It has this feeling and presence in the hand. It feels thin, but you can see it's not whippy. It's not flopping around. I feel like I could deliver the tip exactly where I want it to go. I feel in control, but I feel like it's substantial enough to protect me. This is just a really beautiful and amazing sword. And I need to clean it. And I need to apply more oil to the rag before I do. It is a very neat sword. It is a very neat sword. I'm going to put oil on the rag. And then I'm going to clean it or wipe it down. It's really tough to keep the hilt furniture clean on it. There's spotting and stuff on the hilt furniture, unfortunately. Despite my best efforts, I'm unable to keep it as clean as I would like. It has like a texture to it too, you can probably hear. It's got such a heavy etch that each of those layers, they're not like, it's not like you can feel them particularly well, but they're definitely there. It's not a completely smooth surface. At the same time, like there's no, yeah, it's just cool. I don't know if I did a video on this one. I thought I did. This one's a little bit more thirsty too. It requires some extra oil to get in there. The rusting on the fittings, they weren't blued, but they're somewhat darker. And they get a little bit rusty. I think I could take this sword apart though and clean it and shine it up, but I kind of like the character the patina is bringing. Anyway, this is the St. Catherine. In terms of like swords that I like, my favorite for sentimental reasons is the Albion Mercenary. But in terms of swords that just feel like magic in the hand and have artistry and beauty in them, this is probably the nicest European sword that I've had run through my collection. I want to say it's a $4,000 or $5,000 sword probably, which is not, I run into that pretty commonly with Japanese made swords, but it's less common with the European variety. But this one, just because it's expensive doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to feel good. And this one is one of those that puts a smile on your face. It's just a magic feeling sword. Are Skydro hard to take apart? If it's glued, I don't think they're glued, but they are kind of hammered on. They're a pain in the ass to take apart. And I think Skydro, could be saying something out of turn here. I want to say they don't make them to be taken apart. I don't think they're glued, but I think they're fit on pretty good. So they may not go back together necessarily the same way. But I've taken them apart before and put them back together without too much than a little persuasion. You have to get your persuader out to do it. But I've been able to take them apart and put them back together before. Yes, I do. Randy Jackson. So these are different, but I have these are Marteau. You can feel that this is like an empty metal pipe scabbard. So this is the Duncan sword. It's got a cracked handle on it. The red one, which I think might be one of the original Marteau ones, because it's not quite the Highlander one, got a UPS love tap on it. And these are stainless steel, so I'm just not going to bother with the cleaning. And this one is got the Christopher Lambert. I think it's etched in. I wanted to say it was signed in, but I'm pretty sure it's etched in. But it's got his signature on it. And these are the 1040 or just, I think, stainless steel variety ones. The Randy Jackson thing, I've mentioned it a few times, but for folks that are unaware, I did a Highlander event, the sword experience, and I've reviewed it on my channel before. And if you get a chance to go, I'd recommend it. But there's a video that explains my thoughts on it there. But in that video, well, part of the thing is you can bring things for Adrian Paul to autograph. And I brought a sword, and I had him sign the certificate of authenticity that was with the sword from Point Gallery at the time. Anyway, yes, I as a joke, I walked up and I was like, "Would you sign this Randy Jackson?" I don't think he got it because he was like, "What, really? You want me to sign it Randy Jackson?" But I'd hope that it would be hilarious, but it was not. He was a busy guy though, so I don't know if he laughs at Step Brothers the way the way I do. The movie sound effect. All right, I've caught up on chat. All right, rare for me. All right, this is an antique Compulon, and I love Compulon. They are cool. I think this is one of my other favorite sword types here. You don't see them super represented in anything, but they are fun and neat looking. And this one is an antique, and you can kind of make out the some of the kind of the folding patterns in here. It's not etched, but in some of the lights you can kind of make out some of the folding steel patterns. I think some of these were tourist attraction type things, and so they're made out of leaf springs or something like that, and not particularly fantastic. But this one is quite a bit longer than some of the other ones that I've seen that look a little bit more touristy. And it also just has some cool geometry, which I don't see represented very much when I see reproductions happen, which I have. My training Compulon here, which I'll not pull out at the same time because I'm not competent, but you'll see it in a second. Here, the spine, which maybe isn't going to come through, is really thick, and then it tapers down, and it maintains kind of a thickness in the center, but the spine thins out quite a bit. So not quite the same as Unokobe Zukuri, but similar in that for the Japanese sword folks here, where your edge is thin, but the spine area here is tapered down. So rigidity comes from this lenticular bulb section in the middle here. And they cut and move through things really well. They're a little bit thicker up here, but obviously there's a lot of distal taper and thought and geometry that went into this blade that I just don't see represented on modern pieces. One thing that the system of Eskrima I studied worked with was using this barb to potentially hook. And I really have only seen in photos, and very few photos, Compulon that have a barb that comes back enough to hook or do anything with. So I don't know how accurate what I studied was for, but this hook, supposedly you could use it to grab, restrain, something like that. Other people have said it's for poking skulls and picking them up off the ground. I don't know how applicable, honestly, that would be, but it certainly would stop you from getting, thrusting more than you needed to. Would open the wound potentially, and you could also use this to pry or pick or push things like a shield or something like that with the tip of your sword if you wanted to. So there's uses to it, but it's primarily a chopping weapon. Anyway, I think they are neat stuff, and this is one of the antique examples that I have. They usually have wood, like a wood hilt with I can't remember what it is, like a crocodile mouth on it, or something spiritually significant that I should know about and is escaping me. I'll pull up my other Compulon because it has an awesome feature that you see on quite a few. So there could be like hair and stuff kind of sticking out the end here. And this is what they called the staple. And it is a like an iron rod that's twisted and decorative, and they might have chainmail or some little kind of square or swatch of it that would rest over the hand. So it's not going to protect your bones from impact, but it would from cuts and things like that. So there might be some sort of removable material, but if you wanted to, you could strap chainmail or a bit of leather or cloth or something over to provide some hand protection, though again, not from the percussive side. This again has a similar geometry in that it's thick, it gradually tapers down, and then the spine doesn't thin out the same way, but it still thins out to a degree, and this center section is the thickest, but there's no diamond geometry or anything like that. It's kind of smoothed over like an oval that's sharp at one end and squares off a little bit at the other. And again, a smaller barb here. This one could stand to have some steel wool and oil applied to it, but I just haven't done that. Anyway, there's Compulon. Let me catch up. Is that the Kami Katana behind you with the red and black? I've seen them with 29-inch blades more recently. Not so much. Yes, I think I did a video that showed the Kami that I have behind me, but that is it. You are correct. It's when I talk about things that I tend not to like about the Kami Katana, that like really bold pattern is something that like, where is it? It's something that really stands out. you can pick it out of a lineup, which can be a good or a bad thing. Yes, 'tis the Kami Katana. This is the Cold Steel Messer. Sword friend Ian graciously sent this to me. Initially, I was going to send it back to him, and he didn't want it back. I appreciate the generosity, but some of it might have been to do with the condition. So it didn't come particularly sharp. It has a lot of redeeming factors, honestly. Like it feels good. These little recesses help you feel connected, and it doesn't slip around. It's not sharp at the base. It's got simple, but somewhat shapely crossguard fittings and stuff on it. Some command of taper, and it bends in approximately the right spot, which now I have to wipe down again. But anyway, this one bent when I struck it into a tree branch, and that's not good and puts into question some of the heat treatment on this particular example. Also, the noggle here, which is a little closer to the noggles that I typically see in contrast to the larger sized one on Dark Sword Armory, was loose, and there's just a cylindrical peg that runs through rather than a square one. So when it loosened, it would wiggle around, and I really had to be kind of handsy with a hammer. I've given Landsconnect Comporium so much shit over hammer strikes showing. I appreciate how hard it is to hit these little sons of bitches accurately without chewing everything up. I can't do any better. I want to make that clear. So I took a nail set and put this in a vise and locked it down, and then tried to kind of push out one side of the pin that runs through here to lock it in. And now it's in there kind of, but there's still some wiggle in the crossguard. And that's, I suppose, the other thing is it looks the part of a Kriegsmesser, but with the heat treatment questioned and like wiggle in the crossguard, it's not as robust and durable as some of the other pieces that are available out there. Unfortunately, none of them seem to be available at this price, but at least the pieces from Landsconnect Emporium. Yep. I also said I would talk about the Compulon, then didn't. This is a BCI Compulon, and this and the TFW one have the same kind of different take, but you can see that the spine, I don't know if you can see it, the spine is very thick and doesn't taper down. And unlike all the examples of historic Compulon, it's almost hollow ground in the center and then has a reinforced edge with a secondary bevel. So it's like the antithesis of the geometry. It's like the opposite, and just, yeah, it has an edge, and in that way they're similar, and the tip looks kind of similar, but it's really not quite the same thing. This one has little bumps on the back that are similar to like these extra little swatches on the barb, but I don't think would serve the same function of catching anything or tearing anything or making a wound worse. This one also, I want to say, would bend a little bit in contrast to the TFW one, which seemed to hold up a little bit better. I don't know if they're made of the same thing. I'm pretty confident they are. They look the same, but the TFW could be using a different material. Nevertheless, this one was gifted to me from sword friend Corey. I use it when I practice Eskrima and whatnot, so it's the training one. I do like the way it feels, but I have yet to see a reproduction Compilon that reproduces the geometry that I see in the historic examples, at least that I've had. It's possible they do have different geometries. The Filipino folks had kris with very elaborate fullers and kind of decorative bits in them. It's possible that was, this existed on a Compilon, but I haven't seen it in any example. So it seems a little ahistoric to me, but I'm certainly not an authority on Compilon. I do happen to like them. The handle is similar, and fortunately in this case octagonal, and I can feel and index it better than some of the historic examples, which are a little bit more rounded. You can index them kind of, but I would say this is easier to do that with. But the geometry is just different. You go back here. All right. Where am I? Did I miss anything? Hopefully not. All right, next sword. This is one that I hopefully get done. I bought this moons ago, long ago, from a local collector, and it's a Valiant Armory Malstrada, a Valiant Armory, but this is from the time when they produced in China, and I like elements about the sword visually, and I don't like it all the way it feels. It does this. Floppy. The nodes are in about the right spot, and it's sharp. And I suppose it's nice in contrast when Valiant Armory was making things in China to be able to buy something that was on the thinner and more flexible side than all the swords that tend to be overbuilt. But I still think it could have been done a little differently, a little less floppy woppy. You can see it has a lot of really easy flex to it, though it does flex in approximately the right area. And the furniture on it is really quite lovely. I do think their grips on here are nice. I think the detailing on the hilt area and the crossguard, the little extra kind of added grooves and whatnot add a lot to the character. The grip is also really nice. This, I think, is stainless steel because it's not rusted right now. The kind of scent stopper pommel here, though, has a lot of facets, and they're not sharp, but they haven't found that balance that Albion has, where these appear very crisp, but to the point where there is some discomfort on your hand. It also doesn't blend in particularly well with the where it lines up on the guard. It could certainly be worse. It's not poorly done, but not great. And Albion, I think, found the balance on the mercenary, where I've seen something that visually looks crisp but doesn't seem to irritate my hand when I try to roll it around in my grip. There's that one. What else do I have over here? This is being used as a coat hanger, so that's cool. Lack of an appropriate scabbard. This is the Albion Tyroline, I think. And these are such a pain in the ass to keep clean. No matter how much I oil them, they find a way. They find a way to rust. And it is big. And I think I talked about this in a video I did about big swords. And it is cool looking, and I like it. And between this and the Maximilian, I think I'm going to hang on to this one. But there is something I don't like about it, and that is that this midsection of the grip is for people with even larger hands than I have. Like, it's it's so meaty right here that I have to choke up here and hold the little doorknob at the bottom. But in this position, I really like it. It has some level of comfort, and it is a big, imposing sword. Can I get it in frame? Yeah. But there we go. Kind of. No. Yes. Here we go. Ha. And back in the corner with you. All right. Have I missed anything? The copy line made me realize just how much money you have saved me over the years. I'm glad. Fighting the good fight. I would just lay all those swords in the yard and power. It'd get all gunky in the wrong spots then. But I think you may need a few more swords. It's funny because I think, apart from a few, I've only cleaned the ones that are off, like, and this wall and over here where you can't quite see them. So come on, everyone. I haven't even cleaned the ones that you can see yet. Yes. All right. This is the pole arm, but it needs oil too. This is a naginata from Sabersmith. And it is not great at being a naginata. Don't knock things over. And I suppose I can elaborate what makes it not great at being a naginata. One, the tang only goes down to about yay, which isn't enough to, I mean, I guess if you hold it like a short sword and keep your hand here, it could be, but ideally the tang would go down a little bit more. The shaft is completely round, so you can't index it. There's that, and it's not really suitably sharp to do push cuts. So it's big and kind of scary looking, but it doesn't function particularly well as a naginata. If I just cut it off here and used it as like a wakizashi looking thing, then it would probably work better for that. But I don't want to because it's still kind of cool to have a naginata. What do I need to clean back there? Skip some of that. This is a really old naginata. So this is a Hanwei one. And I've, for some reason, like, they're coming out of the woodwork now, but I'm finding some of the really old Hanwei stuff. Some of it I've been unable to find like information in catalogs on. But this is basically a prettier looking version of the furniture that you see on Hanwei stuff. The shaft is round versus the elliptical one that's available today. But it's just, basically same one, but it looks like it's made out of railway steel almost. It doesn't have quite the same look. But I do like what Hanwei's done on this nagi. It's a little big, but the tip swells out, which is great. And the spine thins down back here, which is great. It thins down maybe a little too much, but it's okay. And just this big belly and the sweep lets me do naginata type things with it. It is, however, really crappy in the shaft, which I put, what is it? They make pills. That's what people are going to say. Problems with your shaft, they make a pill for that. The thing is that the shaft, the way it is now, does not let me do naginata things particularly well. So that much is a downside. And also, when I bought this, I got it for a really great deal. It was like $60 or something like that. But you probably can't see super well. Maybe you can now. The shaft is like curved. It was clearly just leaning against somebody's wall for a really long time. But the fittings are more for a Yari than for a Naginata. I can't index it. I have no idea where the edge is, and I won't be able to use these fittings to correct it. In this case, though, the tang does go down a little bit, like down to here, but that's still, in my mind, not quite enough. Should still be a little bit longer. All right, try and clean a couple more, but I do hear my son is home, so stream will be ending in the not too distant future. This is the Arms and Armor German longsword, German broadsword, Germany. It's a really old one. I want to say it's like 20 or 30 years old, and the ones they make now are a little bit cleaner, but it's cool and I like it. And what else can I say? I think you need a few more. Oh man, I missed some stuff. Sabersmith makes some high quality product, but I wish they would make actual swords, not their interpretation of them. That's fair. They seem to be doing, at least they're identifiable, right? I think the miss on the Naginata is just like it missed two critical points of having like a long tang and a indexable shaft, and otherwise, and a sharper edge. But I think they offer some variety with edges, and somebody probably just didn't choose it on this one. German bastard sword. Hey, Kane. Yes, this is it is fun. It is hefty. It is definitely favoring two hands, but it is handsome and nice, and I enjoy this one as well. I like this big pommel, and I got a chance to see there's a different one in the Oakshott Institute that has a pommel that's very, very similar to this. I think it's a little more nubby, but it's comfy in your hand. I like it. I like the feel. I like the feel of it. Okay, don't fall down and cut me. Fetosai the Ham Slayer, yes. Apparently of a particular variety they do. Chris, just mentioned the live stream on Facebook. Did not pop up for me for some reason. I'm making blades for social in the shop now. Well, that's unfortunate, Chris. I probably won't be doing this too much longer. We'll see when the screaming starts, but it's very funny to have, looks like 39 people watching at the moment, to watch me basically do chores. It's a strange sensation, but I get it. I like playing with swords too. This one, I think some people in the room will probably know what it is. This is the Albion Sovereign, and it is such a pretty sword, but I don't like it. I'm not a huge fan of the way it feels. Maybe if I studied how these swords were used and used the appropriate buckler with it, it's not a bad feeling sword. I've certainly felt harsher Type 14s. I am a sucker for this shape. I think it is beautiful. I love the double fuller. I love the little swelling right off the crossguard here. I think it is just a particularly handsome sword. I'm not a huge fan of the brass. I saw a Sovereign once that had like kind of an all black furniture, and I thought that was, if I was buying it new, kind of the way I'd go. But I got this in a trade. I traded an Arms and Armor rapier for it, and it no regrets. I think it is beautiful and just absolutely quite just a looker, but I don't like it. If you're wondering, I can't say that I've had a Type 14, which I think is what this is, that I like. I don't know that I've ever liked the feeling of them in comparison to which one would I pick up and want to do pokey stabby choppy stuff with. But of the Type 14s, I think the Yeoman was at this point so far, my favorite. And there was also a once at the Arms and Armor shop, I want to say I got to feel their. I had a Henry V sword, their Type 14, and it was I did not like it very much at all. But their hollow ground version was also gave me the gigglies when I got to play with it. Ooh, I missed lots of stuff now. Shit. Hello to you. How many swords is too many? I don't know. I keep saying at least one more and haven't found the end. Any plan to review the German Bastard Sword? Would love to see more stuff about Arms and Armor. If you're looking forward to your opinions, particularly the measurements. I don't know if I've taken detailed measurements about that one yet. The Arms and Armor stuff, I always want to go there and compare it to nicer, cooler stuff. What I want to do next with Arms and Armor, and just haven't gotten a chance to do, is I'd love to take the Schloss Urbach that I have, and I don't know if I reviewed it or not. I think I did. I really like it. Anyway, they have the original that they modeled it after, and then they've got a new one, and it'd be really fun to go to Arms and Armor, take some detailed measurements of the original, the one that I have, and the current one that they make, which is now the one that I have from the Schloss Urbach was done when they only had photos of it, and so it's pretty close, but not quite the same as now that they have the original and can model it off of that. So that's the next one I want to do with Arms and Armor, but I could equally take the German Bastard Sword over there and compare it to the new one, because the one I have is 20 years old. But yes, I do plan on doing it. That's, Kane, actually, you are in a unique position perhaps to understand the plight that I have. It's not that I don't want them, but this is way too many swords for me. I plan on selling most of these. But I keep collecting them and buying them and planning on doing YouTube videos with them. And then I get a sample, I get something else. I find a shiny piece of candy or a penny on the ground, and I don't do it. So a lot of these I bought with the intention of doing a review, talking about measuring, and then moving on. I just haven't done that for a very long time. Yeah, it would be a bad place to be careless. There's a lot of open swords here. Not everyone watches, some just listen in the background. I suppose I can't blame you. I've seen my face. That's not for me. Find the end. Where am I in chat? Have you ever disliked the Sovereign enough to get rid of it? The Albions seem to get lines behind them. I think every time I show an Albion, I get pinged, I don't know, well, frequently about the Maximilian in particular. I just haven't gotten to it. But yes, the Albions I know there are people who desire them. The Type 14 though, yeah, I like it so much. I want to find a big rock to do like a sword in the stone display for, but that's also low on the priority list. It's just so pretty. Where am I? You should install an oil inkjet in your AC. Well, it's like -20 outside. No, not. It might actually be +20. AC only gets used like a couple months a year here, or like a week. Well, that makes one person. All right. All right. Would you like pants off then? No. Next sword. Will I get through? I haven't heard screaming babies. What time is it? Time for me to make some food for children soon. This is Garthang Reforged. I think it was Apocalypse Blade Works offered to clean this up, and I just had to send it to him, and he would address some of the things that have happened to it, because the person who made this said it was a little bit painful to see it in the current state that it was in, and I was gonna send it and then just didn't, but that's something that could be done. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I don't know. It tells a story now, but it might be nice to have it addressed. There's little thises and that's that have that could be cleaned up on it, and that would be nice. But it's still an interesting sword. It's a fun, functional fantasy piece, and I like. I don't know, but I like that there are fantasy pieces out there. I think they used to be a little bit more alluring than they are now. There's people that are doing some experimentation with different shapes and kind of playing with things that are historical, but maybe not examples purely from a museum. But obviously, Garthang Reforged is purely fantasy, but like a Tolkien fan fiction. But I like that story that somebody had a story in the Tolkien universe that inspired them, and they wanted to do something orcish and kind of tell the story with a piece of art that was functional that you go chop water bottles with. So I think that's cool. I wish I saw some more of that, because it does seem like a lot of the functional fantasy pieces that are out there, like, this look cool, and so I made it, or I just went out and was making something, but they're not necessarily trying to tell the fantasy side of it the same way. Or maybe I'm just completely missing the makers that do that. That's also possible. This is a Pulwar. I did a video on this many moons ago and like didn't talk because I didn't. I don't know why, but I was figuring out camera. Anyway, this has a beautiful metalwork, beautiful folding patterns in the surface of the steel, and it's lively and fun, and a very, very fun sword. And I got it in a collection of swords many moons ago, but it doesn't fit my sausage fingers. It looks like when I hold this, my hand has a muffin top. It doesn't. It's not for my hands, I don't think. But I do like the feeling of the blade. You would think maybe by the shape, if you're not used to holding swords like this, that they would feel cumbersome or silly, but there's certainly an intuitiveness to it. All right. The other one, this is a Tulwar, and it has some kind of elaborate, I don't know, I think it's not etched in, I don't think, but plating on the hilt furniture. Also not quite made from a hand, similar muffin top effect, but a very pretty sword all the same. And again, same sense of like intuitiveness. I think somebody mentioned that this wasn't like a foreign blade because it has also the folding patterns and stuff in it. I bought a book many moons ago to read more about this and only got part of the way through, but it is still a very handsome sword. And as I compare like big broad sabers in one hand to how they could feel, these antiques really give some perspective and the weight and how they should feel. They're also like bent and wobbly. They didn't, they're not perfect. The fullers move around. There's ripples in the surface. There's, all sorts of things that I would normally complain about. But in terms of how it feels, good. There's my reviewer words. All right. Well, I made it through some stuff, but I think I'm gonna look at some of the comments, try to answer, and then probably sign off. Where was I? Are you planning to review more swords from the Art of Fire and Iron? If they send them my way, I think they said they would, but I would be happy to. I'd love to see some of the stuff that they show on their website that shows some detailing. It looks like they do some pretty intricate custom work, and it would be really fun to see some of that because it's not something that I see commonly in the sword market. A lot of the fittings on swords, not to say they're all, a little on the bland side, but many of them can be. And so some of the more elaborate work on the hilt is nice to see, and I'd love to see more of that rather than just the kind of practical side of things. I'd also like it if a pommel didn't fall off. I don't think the sword had a bad showing, but I don't think it showed as well as it could have if some of that stuff didn't happen. So it'd be good to show that they can make robust stuff. What else do I have? Do you have a orchid katana? Not at the moment. I do not. What else do I have? I have a kami, an old red Oda Nobunaga. There's a lion dog back there. Probably some others. There's an old practical back there. I think that's what I got for Hanweis at the moment. But no orchid. I've had them. I've reviewed them. And it is one of my favorite swords from Hanwei. I think they are... it doesn't have like a fuller, so it's tougher to do EI with if you want to hear the swishy sound. But because I believe it had a slightly reinforced Kasaki on it, it still was audible. But it's light and still robust enough to, like, if there's a blade that I think is applicable to like Katori or this kind of fast-paced harassing cuts, you're not trying to cleave through a man. Cutting in is still dead, and you're fine with that. That it's a very agile and fun feeling blade for that kind of work, and it wasn't overbuilt. And I thought the furniture was pushing what Hanwei does a little bit, but at the same time, like, really showcasing what they're good at. And it's simple and elegant. I thought it was kind of cool. I really like the orchid. How would I convince my wife to let me collect swords on the scope you are? This is granted a little bit larger mass than I typically would have, and I would say it's not always super supported, but generally my wife is very supportive of it. But I talk about them on the internet, and I trade them, and I buy them, and I'm involved in a community, and it's a thing I do that isn't World of Warcraft. So get a really bad habit, like, I don't know, World of Warcraft, or become an alcoholic, and then do swords. And don't do that. Don't do either one of those things. I don't know. I don't know. But I would say that when, on the rare occasion that I make any amount of money on swords, if I give it to her and say buy something nice, that usually does it. And I find more support that way. Yeah, I don't know. Marry a really awesome wife. That there's that. I think I just might have gotten lucky. Martin sight trick Howard Clark made from S5. Martin sight trick Howard Clark made famous. S5 and S7 are complicated to heat treat and don't show a Hamon well, but done right can be spectacular. I own some S7. They're both tough and hard-edged. Yes. I haven't seen an S7 with a Hamon, but I imagine it could be neat. Saw Garfang in a museum. I thought it was a Tolkien thing. Skallagrim is live. Well, I better get off then, so you can all go watch the man himself. All right. Yes, with that, we'll all go watch Skallagrim instead. Thank you, everyone, for watching. I hope it's been interesting. If you like watching me do chores on the internet, let me know in the commentary, because I may do a follow-up and clean swords and ramble about them. I certainly did not make a lot of progress, but I made some, and there's only most of it left to do. So anyway, if you want to see more, let me know. But I'm going to head out and make some food. Cheers, and thanks for watching.